Good evening, everybody. I hope everybody can hear me tonight. I want to welcome you all to Becoming Monsters. My name is Nighthawk, and I am your host tonight. And hopefully, we don't have technical problems. But we're going to find out. Federal law allows city copyrighted motion videotapes or video circumstances without authorization of the copyright holder. This and is allowed for purposes of criticism, news reporting, teaching, and parody, which does not infringe of the copyright under Section 17 USC subsection 107 of the Fair Use Act. Okay, that being said, I got a little bit more. I got an idea. I got to use my game show voice on this one. This series is information based in part on theory and conjecture. The producer's purpose is to suggest some possible explanations, but not necessarily the only ones, to the mystery we'll examine. All right. I guess that was my good voice. We'll find out. Then I got one more I want to read you. See if I can see it all first. Disclaimer: anything that I show, discuss, and or showcase on this channel is what I do and how I do or feel about things. You must remember to do your own research and decide for yourself if what you see or hear on this platform is right for you, as only you can decide for yourself. I am not God for that. A doc, maybe. An engineer? No, you don't want me building no bridges. Or a professional of any kind. Yeah, that's why I'm an Indian chief. All I offer are ideas that you can draw from and a bit of entertainment. Entertainment. Imagine that. I put a twang on that. Been down here in the South too long. Thank you and God bless. Okay. That being said, all right. Yes, I'm all prepared for the snow that's supposed to be coming. That miraculous. We went from roughly 65, 70 degrees, beautiful days, to now overnight we're so. I guess spring has sprung. I guess Phil was wrong. Punxsutawney soup is what we're gonna have. Anyway, I am going to bring my brother from another one, Dennis Carroll, the infamous Dennis Carroll. And how'd that get on there? How did that get on there? The world is run by a secret group of reptilian humanoids from other dimensions who are disguised as human beings. How did that get on there? Wait a minute. We got to get that off of there before I get shut down. We got to get that off of there. Where's the off button? We can leave it on there for a few seconds. Let everybody get a good read. Okay, I'll bring my brother on.
Good evening, my spiritual brother.
Good evening. How we doing, brother?
All right. Yeah, I think them mean old reptilians put that up there, William. They're always up to something.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's like hard to control some of these buttons sometime on the side. So do you know? Like, anyways, I thought we'd cover a couple different topics tonight. Um, I threw up there discussion on like Frankenstein. Just take the whole idea of Frankenstein. Um, I guess you could classify it as a monster, as becoming a monster, even though
Mm.
technically Frankenstein become a monster
Well,
because he
I've
was
talked
dead.
about I've talked about the story of Frankenstein in several of my lectures, and here's something I always tell people about the story of Frankenstein: is you got to remember the real monster was not the creature, creature that Frankenstein created. It was really Dr. Frankenstein himself. He was the real monster. And really, in some ways, he was,
Right.
because he took this creature out of nothing, gave it feelings, gave it a
Mm-hmm.
soul per se, almost. He gave it, humanity, and yet he didn't consider the consequences. And that's a lesson for all of us today, especially in science. We
Yeah.
got to remember the portals we open, the things we do, the machines we make, the AI that we create. They're going to have consequences. And we must never forget that lesson. That's the main lesson of Frankenstein. When you try to play God, you're going to suffer the
Yep.
consequences of it.
Yep. Exactly. I agree. I agree with that. Exactly. And that's from the depiction of Dr. Frankenstein. Um, he was depicted as the mad scientist that felt like God because he created this, which ironically, the creator, which usually is what happens if you create something. Um, and they portray that happening in several types of movies, not just Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, but they portrayed it in a lot of other movies, like even Pet Cemetery, with the child coming back from the grave. Um,
Yeah.
that was a father's desire and heartfelt loss and remorse that he wanted bad. He would do it at any cost. And you almost have that, is that how Dr. Frankenstein felt, or is it just narcissism for thinking he was so much more than being that he was Frankenstein?
Well, it was kind of an ego thing with him in a way. And ego gets in the way of a lot of things, and it's destroyed a lot of people and a lot of ideas and a lot of good groups and all that. Ego can do that, and it was an ego trip in one way for Frankenstein, Dr. Frankenstein. I mean, remember he said, "Now I know what it feels like to be God." You know, and the interesting thing about that is
Yep.
he let the ego get the best of it. And like I said, he didn't consider the
Mm-hmm.
consequences of his actions. Now, if you go back and you read the original Frankenstein by Mary Wollstonecraft Shelley, um, she actually has the creation of Frankenstein not to electrical means and all that, because electricity was relatively unknown in her time. There was some interesting aspects of it. I'll talk about that in a minute. But it's all done in a chemical process.
Mm-hmm.
If you read the book very closely, what he does is with chemicals and elixirs, almost like an alchemist, you know, would do. But now in Mary Shelley's time, there were experiments with electricity, William. And I think one of the actual prototype of Dr. Frankenstein was a doctor named Oppel, I think his name was. And what he did, he actually would take like a leg or an arm and reanimate it in a way with electricity. He would make it move, which it really wasn't alive. It was a muscle reaction of the electricity doing that to the part.
Right.
But people, when they saw that, that was like magic to them. They didn't understand that. That was an amazing thing, and it scared them. And that is where they said, could this man for actually know the secrets of life and death? Could he bring somebody back from the dead? And that was what so astounded Mary Wollstonecraft Shelley. That was in her mind when she created this. What if man could go that next step beyond? And that's what the actual title of Frankenstein is, the modern Prometheus. Now, Prometheus, as you know, in Greek legend, gave humanity fire and was punished. He was punished by it, by the gods. He was punished for doing that. So he kind of gave them a secret. And that's what she was saying Frankenstein was dealing with, the secrets of life and death, which are still a lot of secrets to us all these years later. With the science that we have now, it's still a big secret to us, life and death. And some of us who have gone beyond that, Paul, and kind of took a peek on the other side of what might be, death, we've seen just a brief glimpse of that, but it's still a big secret to it, And like I've said before, in my 55 plus years, I've pursued the paranormal. One day I will become part of the paranormal. That's just the way life goes. But that is the interesting thing about all this, William, was life and death, that divide between life and death, But this guy was reanimating body parts. In other words, it would make them move. He had a dead dog or a dead pig or something that would actually, when he put electricity to it, and electricity was an unknown force to them for certain ways. It was something new to them. They could see the lightning in the sky, and know that it was electrical, but they couldn't harness it like we have now, like Tesla and some others have harnessed it over the years. But it was a mystifying type thing, a magical kind of a thing to them. And actually, this Dr. Doppel was run out of town for being a sorcerer. Eventually, his work got the best of him. They got rid of him. They didn't kill him. I think it just ran him out of town. Very interesting. I'll tell you a quick side note about Mary Wollstonecraft Shelley. She was married to Percy Shelley, a very great poet. And, when he died, he got drowned. He drowned it in a river, I think in Italy somewhere, I believe it was. He drowned it, and actually they burnt his body on the shore of that lake. And his friend was there, and he saw his heart burning in the ashes. And he took a stick, and he got the heart out, and he wrapped it up and gave it to Mary Shelley. And she kept, for the rest of her life, she traveled everywhere with the heart of her dead husband. And when she died, they actually found his heart in her desk drawer. That's the mother of Frankenstein.
Yeah. Right. Good.
Macho Man or Randy Savage.
Very much the right.
Drop on that. Yeah.
I used to love one.
Unfortunately, William, we are becoming our own little Frankenstein nowadays. The things that we do with science, and I had an article I sent you the other day about the monster hogs. They've actually bred wild boars with domesticated hogs, and now they've escaped in Canada. They can carry all kinds of diseases and stuff like that. And now they're threatening the wildlife. They're coming down into America. They'll be in Virginia and places like that before they get to me, by the way. But this is another thing, just like the killer bees that were turned loose. When we mess around with nature, we pay a price.
All right. Well, that broke up real bad there for about 5 minutes. I don't know what it is, but something is messing with our feed again. Um,
Yeah, it's a little
anyways,
choppy
we're gonna
tonight.
keep on plugging away at it. Um, yeah. I want to say good evening to everybody out there. Katie, Monster Radio, Darcy. Um, everybody
Hello, Dark.
fantastic and supporting everything and supporting me. Midwest Night Watch with Dixon. Good to see you. Um, what? Oh, excuse me as I try to clear the bug from my throat. Um, I'm just going to go through some of the comments here. Hey, Tombstone, good to see you, brother. Let's see here. We have no questions or statements yet about the subject matter. But, Dennis, let me bring this up. What's to say, just say hypothetically, is say that some of the stuff and some of the cryptids that we're seeing today are not the makings of some madman garage scientist in the world. I know we've touched this subject. We got on the subject of CERN with the Hadron Collider. And that's a whole nother subject. The one in New York just did something pretty miraculous. Eyes creating some kind of mass plasma type of a thing that hasn't been seen for over 13 million years or something like that. But and God knows what they're creating all around the world with those things. But what's to say that some garage scientist that lives next to a cemetery hasn't done something along the lines of Frankenstein? Like take for instance the Goat Man, or Sheep Squatch, or Dog Man, for that matter.
Or like those hogs I was
You
talking about earlier. That's just another that would be considered something along those same lines. Yeah, a lot of this would not surprise me if some dark science is not involved in a lot of this stuff. It wouldn't be no surprise. Look at the rebobs in California that people talk about. The different the bat boy in Texas, the different animals that seem to crop up out of nowhere. Could some of these things be a product of some kind of dark science?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And then it is a product of dark science. It goes back to that old thing I talked about before previously about who is watching this type of activity that's being done behind garage doors and stuff, you know. So, you have to think, where is the arm of the safety of this play into all this, and the arm of the law, the law for the citizens to back them up on their safety, from somebody making a creature, out of nothing, because it's been proven that it can be done, by a Russian scientist, by surgically adapting an extra head on the body of a dog to make a two-headed dog. It's been done through genetic gene studies, with the cloning programs. Who's to say that there isn't some whacked out doctor out there trying to do what Frankenstein You know,
Mhm. It wouldn't surprise me.
who's this?
And
You know, I mean,
here's another thing.
yeah,
Some
exactly.
of that stuff, some of that stuff you just described, William, are actual facts that Russian scientists have been trying to do with head transplants and different things. It's far fetched. I know what we're talking about tonight sounds like something out of a horror story, but this is real stuff. This is not made up. This
Right,
is actual science stuff going on. Um,
right.
you never know. You never know what your neighbor's really got going in the garage yet. If he's one of these scientists that's working on something like that, um, you might be surprised one day to find out something like that along those lines. We don't know. And like I said before, I said in my book, The Road Unseen, uh, there are rogue scientists that work out there. Oh yes, there are definitely. I even know one young man who is actually a physicist, and he was like 12 years old. Come on, now, I mean a real nuclear physicist, and was 12 years old. He had his own little nuclear lab in the house. Okay, I mean this stuff is real. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, they say they can translate heads. That's
Yeah,
a Russian scientific experiment that's gone on for many years, back in the 50s. This is nothing new. This goes way back.
yeah,
Um, and like it ties in a lot with what we talked about with the Super Soldier program before. A lot of weird scientific experiments have gone on. Look at what Dr. Joseph Mengele was up to with the Nazis. And even going back to the days I've mentioned this before by the Island of Dr. Moreau, which was written by H.G. Wells. I think it was H.G. Wells who wrote the Island of Dr. Moreau. He was experimenting with the combining animals and humans, you know. So that was in the 1890s. Think about that. This is nothing new to science. But
right.
there are without a doubt rogue scientists out there. There are some, and like an article I sent you the other day about mixing fentanyl with some other kind of chemical would actually turn you into a zombie. It would rot the flesh off of your body, but turn you into a mindless zombie. That's
Yeah.
not. I mean, that sounds like something out of a TV program, but it's not. This is fact, folks. This is real stuff.
This is true. This is when does uh, a time series of and the science a threat to society accomplish? Do we look at it as say some new way to um, body and the animal body? Do we stop? Do we continue to the AI part of the download to a computer? Less as made um, Stein.
Well, to tell you the truth, William, and that's where a lot of this AI comes in, making our own robots. These monsters will be in the image of us, just like the Frankenstein monster was in the image of his creator, Dr. Frankenstein, to a certain extent. The image of what you create. And that's what this AI stuff is all about. It's great stuff if you could get the paralyzed to walk again, people that have had strokes to repair their brains, the different things you could do with AI and robotics. But it never turns out that way. Man is inherently, and I hate to say this, imperfect. And whatever he creates will be imperfect in the end. And imperfection breeds evil. It breeds darkness. That's what imperfection is all about. And man is imperfect. Whatever he makes, it tends to be imperfect, and he does it the wrong way. Look at nuclear energy. What a great thing. And a limitless energy, almost a limitless energy that would do great things. And yet, man can make bombs out of it to destroy ourselves with. They take the science and use it every time for the wrong purpose. They never use it for the right things to help people to make life better. They don't do it that way. It's just the way man,
Right.
humankind works, unfortunately,
Right.
because we are imperfect creatures ourselves. How can we create perfection? There's no way we can. But you're very true on
Right.
that score, William.
Right.
It
Well,
seems that man wants to say, I can be God better than God can be God. I can reason better. I should be God, kind of a thing. That's what it
yeah.
comes down to. Is that ego thing again.
Right. Right. Now, looking at it, say from a perspective of what if somebody is such a sheer genius, um, that they think themselves to be in a status comparable to God, uh, the Creator, yet knowing that they only have a mortal existence, are trying to seek their own immortality, from what they're doing, to
But
prove
that's what
themselves to
cloning is
be
all about,
a
William. Let's
god,
let's
kind of
look at
like,
the
oh,
let's look at the brass tacks on cloning, William. That's what that's all about. If we can clone you, William, and your heart wears out,
right,
we can get you another heart put in. You're gonna live forever. But basically, you're gonna be almost immortal because you can keep replacing those parts. You're not gonna die.
right. Yeah, I agree with Joshua here. AI stuff
Mm-hmm.
is scary. Uh, yeah, yeah. The whole, and then, like, it's taking on the AI stuff. Um, it's, the cloning thing is so, if you want to save somebody from a disease, a drug disease, a horrifying disease, if I could be made better than normal, I would jump at the chance for it. So any of my alien buddies out there want to, take me some night and put me back to normal with all my parts and stuff, and make me
But
solely
appreciate
human again, that would be great. Um,
it. Be very appreciated.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Well,
But
here's the
that
thing.
being
Here's
said,
the thing about it, William. Here's the injustice of it. Okay. Right now, if you needed a heart transplant, you don't have any insurance, you don't have any money, there's no way you're going to get a kidney or a heart transplant or nothing that easy. But if you're rich, filthy rich,
right,
billions of dollars, you can get it overnight. You can buy anything if you got the money, okay? And that's the injustice of it, really. Somebody that really needs help and somebody comes in with more money, they get the help that you don't. That's not right, I've always said if you're going to be fair in life, whatever it may be, and I'm talking about prejudices or hatred or something, all this, they hold mankind back because if you're going to be fair with
right,
mankind, you need to go straight across the board with everybody treated the same exact way. Nobody should have a better shot at it than you just because they've got more money. That's not right. And that's the way that goes, though. And that's the way it is with
yeah,
cloning. How could you afford to have William cloned tonight? You can't. You ain't got the money. So you're left out in the cold. That's it. But if meanwhile I'm a billionaire and I got plenty of money, I can get done whatever I want to do. I'm gonna live a whole lot longer than you are, and that's not fair. Really, it's not. Just because I got the money over power
and
or whatever it
and
may
and,
be.
and yeah, and then you think about Dennis too. You also think about, the whole black market, scenario, with the human organ harvesting that's going on.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you hear horrific stories of people being abducted and waking up somewhere a couple days later,
With a
having a
kidney miss.
surgery done that they didn't know about, with a kidney missing, or, or something worse. Um, you hear about it all the time. And you have to wonder if a lot of these missing persons that are out there. And it always seems to go back to the missing persons. You have to wonder if maybe some of that percentage of people aren't being taken for the human organ harvesting. Um,
Exactly.
you know, I, if that's the reason for cloning, operation
I
the
worked,
black market,
William. I worked
then
for 30 years I worked at a hospital for 30 years in the medical profession, and I delivered organs, by the way, that were donated and stuff like that. And it is a big, big business. Uh, Organs, human organs. That includes eyes, corneas,
mhm,
uh, breast implants, all this other different things. It's a big money making thing too, by the way. And insurance companies are deep into this stuff as well. I think insurance companies is among some of the most nefarious companies out there. They're into everything, and uh, and yet there's a lot of that goes on. It would not surprise me if there's not a lot of human harvesting type things going on. I'd be surprised there wasn't actually, because I think there's a big
right,
market for it, definitely. Oh yeah.
right. It almost makes you wonder too that a lot of these um, really tight knit um, communities, and I'm not saying like the Amish and stuff like that, but I'm saying some out there are not doing stuff like this, that aren't taking people and harvesting what they can out of them. I heard of one case too that a gambler actually owed like and to some big ball shark Vegas, and this guy did take one of Yoda. He basically gave the gambler, "You're gonna die, or you and I'll take 50 grand off of what you owe me."
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
I
Well, I'm gonna tell you,
mean,
here's another
market
point, William.
for that, and that's
Here's
the
another point.
sad, the
Another
sad
point we
thing.
need to think about. If you're going to do human harvesting, who you going to go after? You're going to go after young people. You don't want the older organs that have been used a lot. You're going to go after young people, teenagers, even maybe very young teenagers. That would be the ones you would go after if that was what you were going to do. With the human harvesting thing, you wouldn't go after the older people for it. Definitely not. And I'm saying the 20s and 30s years old. You would go after the
And
prime meat, as you might say, as they say in the butcher shop. Prime meat.
going, Dennis, what's going on? Group that's are from age to 28. Okay, 14 to 28. So there's a 14-year span there in age that is the most missing populace in the world. Okay. And, you have to really wonder if, there isn't some doctor out there, Dr. Mangala or Dr. Frankenstein out there doing the old organ harvesting for somebody and taking
Oh, yeah.
somebody's heart and putting it
A
into
lot of
another
money in it.
person for 100 grand.
Big money. Big
Yeah.
money.
But
Well, here's
but
another thing you got to
doesn't
look
that
at
make
too, William.
them a
Okay.
Frankenstein?
Well, here's another thing. Okay.
Doesn't
If you
that
don't get
son?
your money, if in science you don't get your money through research grants, that would be another way to pick up some extra dough. Harvest some organs and make some money that way too for your own experimental purposes. Definitely, that would be another round to go on that. No, I'll agree with you, Stephen. I do not believe clones have a soul because they're not born naturally. No.
I on that. Um, but my whole thing about it, and I know this is a big subject in a lot of like third world countries, and where they're not as highly, the citizens aren't as highly protected as they are in some Western countries and Eastern countries. Um, there, China for one has to come up with the black market of organ harvesting, and human trafficking. Um, Russia comes up with possibly that connection and all that, and they're the ones that have the actual given surgical history of transplants of dog and all that, which made some of their doctors Dr. Frankenstein's.
Mm-hmm.
But then you have countries like Brazil, even Mexico, that possibly are doing the organ harvesting through a lot of the drug cartel. Does that make them a Dr. Frankenstein? You know, does that make them in any way possibly a Dr. Frankenstein? I mean, there's just so much to go with this whole thing. Then put government on top of it, Dennis. Throw government in the mix. How about the possibility of our own government doing the cloning and all that, like we all know that they do, um, but also doing the human organ harvesting. You know, I mean, it almost gets to be to the point where you have to question the whole across the whole board, because if you question part, you're going to have to question the other part. Um, so who do you trust? You know, I mean, who do you really trust that will not have you wake up 2 days later and you're missing a kidney, or you have an extra arm off your back, or uh, I hate to say it, guys, but you're missing your um, excitement organ. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, there's
Well,
that could
and
happen. That's
like
happened.
Irene,
That's
like Irene says there about Japan, and the man-made organs and all that. Actually, a lot of these organs are on the black market, like we said earlier. You don't go through the regular channels to get some of these. If you've got the money, you can buy anything in this world, and that goes along with organs. But in countries like
yeah.
China and Russia, where they have these work camps, they have basically they're concentration camps. You can go in and get any, the younger people out you want. You got plenty of a market to pick from on these things. And like I say, if you're in power in a communist country, you're a despot. That's what you are. You're a dictator. You could get done whatever you want done, and your buddies can too. Let me say this about dictators right quick. A dictator is only in power because he's got a gang to back him up. It's like a gangland thing. Hitler was the same way. Stalin was the same way. You got your own little gang backing you up, or you couldn't do it alone. One man alone could not stand. He'd get assassinated sooner or later. He'd get removed. But if you got a gang backing you up, if your gang is stronger than the other gang around you, you lead, and that's the way that goes. And that's the same thing with this organ harvesting we were talking about earlier. If you've got the power, you can get anything, and you can touch anything and do anything you want. You don't have to go through channels to do it. And that's
All
the
right.
under the thing that bothers me most about this, William, is that all of this could be open freely to people that really need these things. So much better and easier
Right.
if it weren't for the people in power that's holding back. And like we said before, you have to wonder: is there a cure, a real cure for cancer out there, and they just don't want you to know it because you get more money out of treating it than you do curing it? You have to
Right.
wonder. You have to
Right.
wonder what's going on with the medical
Right.
profession in that respect. You know.
And, and then you have to think happening everywhere, like Tombstone says, and then you have our buddy trust no one. And how do you not trust anyone? I mean, that's putting a complete opposite on the spectrum of the teachings that we're taught as religious following good decent human beings on how to act. um is that word religious following instead of Christian following, because there are a lot other religious groups, and faiths out there. So, and I'm not going to single anyone out. I think they're all beautiful faith. Um, and you believe in what you believe in, and that's your right. You know,
That's a
that's
personal
why we
personal
have free
thing. Yeah,
will.
very very personal
But
thing. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It- but it's like, how do you determine who to trust and who not to trust? How do you, um, I know you're not supposed to put your faith in man. Okay. That is a given. You don't put your faith
No,
in man. You don't put anything before your creator. You don't, you know, uh, put any engraving images before your creator. So, but where do you begin to protect
well,
yourself in today's
let,
society?
let me tell you this.
Um,
Let me tell you this, William. Let me say this, okay? We're dealing with humankind, and like I said earlier, he's imperfect. We're imperfect. That's just the way we are. We're made up. We labor under a curse of imperfection. Okay, we're cursed with that. We're under that curse. But the only person,
right,
the only thing you can trust is God because He is perfect. You may put your trust in me. I might be the best guy you ever met in your whole life, and I'd be the best friend or best brother or whatever you got, and I can still let you down. I can still let you down because I'm imperfect. That's the flaw we all have. Okay, none of us are any better than anybody else because we've all got that flaw. Mankind or humankind will let you down eventually. That's why you can't trust them. That's just the way it goes. You can only trust them so far. But here's what, and I've been accused, by the way, in my paranormal career several times of being a CIA spook because I was into so many different areas. I said, no, I'm not into them, but people are very leery of you, of course, and I can understand that, especially if you ask too many questions. But the whole thing is, when it
right,
comes to
right.
trust, you can only put your true trust in God and let Him take care of the rest. That's the only way you can go with it. I'm sorry, but that's it. God gives you brains, sense to understand. You can only trust some people only so far, and that's it. And some you can't trust at
Right.
all. You know those people. You got a line of trying to know those people you're dealing with. But in the end, the only true thing you can trust in this whole life is God, and let Him take care of the rest. You got to trust Him to let Him be able to take care of the rest with the trust. That's just the way that goes. But
Well,
unfortunately, I've seen some really good people that fell and tripped and stumbled over things that destroy their careers and stuff because that's just us. We have that imperfection streak in us. You know, I'm afraid
yeah,
that's the
yeah,
way it goes.
yeah, exactly. But I have I have a confession to make that it's disturbing because we all have loss. Um, and trust me, nobody's going to want to harvest my organs after I'm dead and gone. Trust me, they've been so irradiated that
You wouldn't
they
want mine,
probably
no.
glow inside me. So yeah.
I,
Anyways, unless you're the
I don't.
Energizer Bunny, then with all that radiation energy, you'd probably go pretty far.
I done wore my organs out pretty good there, William. I need some new.
Yeah, yeah. Um, here's another thought on the whole spectrum of trying to figure out why Dr. Frankenstein was a monster and not the monster that he created. You know, what if you look at it on the perspective of like today? You have doctors transplants every moment of the day. You have unfortunate people that pass way too soon. Um, that loved ones really miss. And then it seems like within hours, their organs are harvested and transplanted in other people. Um, Now, my whole reason for stating this is, where do you stop? Where does the doctor being the hypothetical medical hero to save seven people's lives when one's lost, um, compared to when that doctor is labeled a monster maker. Um, you hear of tales of organs being transplanted people, and the people that got their life, whether it's a kidney or whether it's a heart, a lung, uh, a liver, whatever, and those people have certain traits, take on certain attributes that the deceased person had. Now, what if that deceased person was one that was not mentally stable, one that was considered a psychopath, and they harvested the organs and put them into good, God fearing, decent people, and made five people that got organ transplants from that one corpse of the psychopath, made five psychopaths because those people take on the traits
Well,
of the psychopath.
William, really, the only organ that would do that would be the brain. Your liver is not evil. Your pancreas is not evil. Your kidneys are not evil. It's the brain. The brain can hold that certain amount of evil in it, that aberration of what's going wrong. That's the story of Frankenstein. You remember he sent his servant to get the good brain and he dropped it and broke it. He broke the good brain and he went and picked up the brain of a degenerate person, a person who was hanged for murder. And they used that. That was the mistake Frankenstein made. He didn't check where his brain came from. And so they put the brain of a degenerate person, an evil person, in the body of the creation. And that's where everything went wrong after that. That was Dr. Frankenstein's worst mistake. He didn't, and that's the only organ that would really do that, the brain. So you'd have to be very careful if you did a brain transplant. And another thing is, could you change that brain once you implanted it in someone? Could you download another personality into it? Could you download another nature to it? And where would be the connection? Here's the interesting part, and this is where Frankenstein stumbled and fell. Where would be the connection between the brain and the soul of that person? The soul. If
Right.
the soul is warped and twisted, you know, you know, and it's connected with that brain. And is the brain the seat of the soul? Is that where the soul resides? Which I think it would be the perfect place if it were to reside anywhere in your body. It would be in your brain. That would be the place it would stay. So that was the connection he stumbled over. He didn't take into the fact he forgot all about being a man of science. His number one sin was he forgot all about feelings and soul. He left that out, that equation out, and that's what the monster held against him. The monster in the story finally tells him, I hate you. You're my creator, but I hate you because of one reason and one reason alone. You didn't love me. Frankenstein left that out. See, he left that love and that soul part out, of everything he done. Was the monster without a soul? That's the number one question in the story of Frankenstein. That monster he created, and you remember on his tomb, his name was Frankenstein, maker of men, and that guy scratched it out and wrote monsters. Because the reason why he's a monster is he doesn't really have a soul, or does he? If he doesn't have a soul, he's really a monster. That's what makes him a monster. But like I said, the real moral of the story, the real monster is Dr. Frankenstein himself.
Right. And there was a movie out there, that recent movie called I, Frankenstein, that actually depicted pretty good moral compass around the whole theory of a Dr. Frankenstein. It really did, to a point where another called the monster, instead of a monster, they named Adam. Okay.
Yeah.
Because of the story of creation of man.
The first man.
Now, do you think that that's just something is right? Do you think it's right to actually assume that the monster is symbolic,
humanity,
like original Adam? Right. Or do you still think that, it has no right to be a name because it is a monster and wasn't birthed?
Well, it's interesting you should bring that up, William, because Mary Wollstonecraft Shelley was going. You notice the monster never has a name. He never has a name. He's nameless. And she was going to name him Adam, but she said that was sacrilegious. That was blasphemous in a way, She didn't want to go that route. But so this is literally an anthology of a man creating the first man, so to speak, like God created Adam. And Adam turned against God. He did that in the Garden of Eden. He turned against God, his creator, and so does the monster in Frankenstein. The monster turns against his creator because he told him, he hates him. He kills his wife, his bride. He kills his wife. He's out to kill Dr. Frankenstein. They hate each other. They end up in the story in the Arctic Circle, chasing after each other to kill each other. They hate each other. So their creation turned against his creator, just exactly the way man turned against God. But this creation turned against his creator, Dr. Frankenstein, because he said, you didn't love me. You didn't love me. You didn't give me any morals. And he learned things. He could read the actual, if you go back and read the actual story, he's not a monster that can't talk and can't say and can't move. He's a very intellectual kind of guy because he gets books and he reads. But here's the whole thing. Why did he say you didn't love me? Because you made me ugly. I was awful looking. People were afraid of me. People hated me because of what you did to me. And that's why I hate you. You didn't love me. You made me this way. So that's his excuse for turning against his creator. It's a very interesting anthology, William, because really she's kind of holding a mirror up to mankind, and say, this is what you are. This is the way you look at your creator,
Mm-hmm.
because, you judge him. How can you judge God when God alone is fit to be the judge, not you? And that's the way, that was the question in her
Okay.
story.
Here's another way to look at it. Yeah,
What's that?
here's another way to look. And I'm going to bring this up to the people in the chat too, all our fans. Um, when I first came out, and I looked at all the scars across my body, I that came to mind was I was created into a monster, that I was turned into a monster. Where does that depiction of becoming a monster, because that's what the program's called, don't get me wrong, folks,
Becoming a monster.
where does that okay, I am literally I don't know, when you have a physiology of internal organs and you're left with several and anybody that's had surgery knows that when you see a lot of scars and stuff, that it makes you feel a certain way. You don't want to be the one poolside wearing a shirt and shorts and not swimming because you're afraid your scars will show. But you are, you don't want to be the one that's told to at a doctor's office to especially a doctor that doesn't know you and doesn't know your scars,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
to remove your shirt and strip down to your underwear because you got to get a physical exam, and they look at you like you're some kind of a freak from a sideshow.
Ragdoll. Like a ragdoll. Yeah.
You know,
Patchwork.
yeah, yeah.
Well,
It's
William,
like,
let me say this
yeah,
about this, William.
and
Okay,
it's like
I've seen people without their nose. I've seen people without ears. I've seen people with a lot out there, and you would consider them almost monstrous looking. I know that's bad to say that, but some people can say that's out of the ordinary. So that's what the whole thing about Frankenstein is. He's not a normal person. He's not a regular guy like all the rest of us, and that's why he's got a chip on his shoulder. He's a monster. He looks that way. People scream when they see him. They run away from him. They're scared of him. They've set him aside. He's different, you know. And just what you said about having scars, or people with the different things wrong. Maybe they're blind, or they're deaf, or they limp, or they have one leg and all that. We tend to look at people like, oh, that's not a normal guy. We call that abnormal. That's really basically calling those kind of people a monster. Really, when it's not really, that's not what they really are. But that's that's the way the human looks at something. If it's out of the ordinary, if it's not one of us, then it's one of them. And we don't want to mess with it. And we kind of handle it different. And that's really not good. That's really not good to do that, because that's a human being. And that's what Frankenstein was saying. Frankenstein's monster was telling him, I'm a human being. I got feelings. I hurt. My heart breaks. I get my feelings hurt. I'm a human being. And yet you didn't consider that. You didn't consider me human. And that was the big mistake Dr. Frankenstein made. Okay, that was the biggest mistake he made. He didn't treat him as a fellow human being.
No.
Yeah. And when people see your scars, and I've seen people scarred up, badly burned. I'll tell you, I've seen some horrible stuff.
Bad.
I've worked in morgues, and I know what people look like. And it's something that you recall from part of your nature. It says, oh, it's not right. It's abnormal. It doesn't look like a person should. But really, we need to get over that. We need to get past that and see that person not on the outside. We need to see that human being that's there, and not the outward look of that person, no matter what color they may be or what condition they may have. We need to get past that because we make monsters. We make our own monsters when we shouldn't, you know?
That's the next bit of all this too. Where the psyche, the whole psyche, because time would have made a yet freak of flesh and bone. What if it was something beautiful that Dr. Frankenstein made? What if it was the complete opposite of what Frankenstein's monsters? Then do you call it still a monster? Do you call it life?
If it looked exactly like its creator, you would love it more. If it looked exactly like you, or you could equate yourself with it, yes, you would love it more than what we used to call a red-headed stepchild. Here's the thing about it, and people who have adopted children, unfortunately, sadly, know this sometimes, not everybody, but sometimes they have a difference in their own child and somebody else's child, although they've adopted that child and make it their own. Some people can't get past that. Some people can, but some people can. And that's it's all up here, you know. If it doesn't look like you and act like you, you know, even your children do that to a certain extent. You see yourself in your children sometimes, you know, and that makes you have a much greater bond with them children. You know, even though they're your flesh and blood, those attributes you share together creates a greater bond. And when that bond is not there, then you tend to push that child away. You know, there's something wrong. You know, and that's what happened with Frankenstein and his creation. He was ugly. You know, he was scarred up. He wasn't pretty, and he didn't have all the attributes that Frankenstein, who was so smart, so sure of himself, so confident. He didn't have all those attributes, so he kind of pushed him away. He wanted to destroy him as soon as you made him. He wanted to get rid of it. And so your dad doesn't do you that way, you know. That had to hurt, of course. That had to really hurt, and that's why he said, "You didn't love me. You didn't love me. You made me a monster. You didn't love me, you know." And that's the sad thing about it. We do that in a lot of different ways, you know.
Right. Now, does that make like aliens are doing their whatever they are with their cattle mutilations and all that, and human mutilations? Does that make aliens a proverbial dying? That they're using these animal parts and body parts. Does that make them a Frankenstein?
I've often thought about that, William.
Possible.
You know, if they were supposedly had a hand in our creation of some sort, but yeah, we just didn't equal up to them. They're so much smarter, so much better, so much more perfect in other ways than we are. We would be that red-headed stepchild to them. They would not care for us as much. They would be analytical towards us, like Frankenstein, Dr. Frankenstein was with his creation. He was very analytical. He didn't have any feeling for it. He couldn't equate himself with it. He had no empathy. The empathy was gone. And that's the strange thing that struck me about a lot of these things that people talk about with the aliens. The number one alien attribute that they don't have is empathy. They can't empathize with us for some reason. And that bothers me, because if you can't empathize with something, and you can't have any feeling for it, and you don't see it as another sentient being, just like a shark in the water has no feeling for you when he eats you up, because he doesn't see you as another shark. He sees you as something to eat. You know, to me, that is the bad part about being eat up by animals and all that. They're not gonna feel they don't have those feelings for you that you have. To me, that's the bad thing about it. But now, to the story of Frankenstein, is that so interesting in that aspect is that he lost that empathy for his creation. He couldn't empathize with it. He had no feeling for it, which is very unlike what God is supposed to be. Our Creator loves us more than any, and the Bible says more than any person could ever love, more than you could ever love your child. Think about that. That's a very bold statement. If your Creator doesn't care for you, then you are definitely some kind of a monster, aren't you? You know, they don't have the empathy for you. And I've also that's
Right.
about the aliens. That's why I say the aliens are not good guys. If they're doing this to people, that's not being empathetic with people. That's not having feelings for people, trying to help people. That's dark. That's bad. That's kind of evil. You know, it's not good.
Yeah. Yeah. We know that it's something that's dark and nefarious for that because of all the innocent lives that are being sacrificed for their harvesting programs. Um, with respect to the aliens, and respect to all my brothers and sisters out there in the chat, you know, whole premise of calling ourselves monsters, and being depicted, is hot, to say the very least. Um, take it from somebody that knows firsthand what scars and certain medical procedures do to your whole ability to rationalize things. It takes years to recover from some of the almost abusive practices just to save a life. You know, in some aspects, it is then um, only because it saves the human body from experiencing and the sacrifice that you're going through in order to live. Um, in that whole theory, though, you got to understand the capacity. I'm not a shrink in any way. I am not a shrink. I am a psychologist, a psychologist in any way, shape, or form. In, um, but when it comes to the humans, it is such a fragile animal. It's kind of like in bulb. Each try every year not to break a million pieces because it's so old and it's delicate. That is almost a perfect example of our mental thinking, okay? And you through the rigors of trying to save your life and having organs removed and transplanted and tests done on you and all that to save a life, um, it damages that, it fractures that crystalline ornamental kind. It makes you think outside the realms of like you're a normal human being anymore. Because, like we've said before, some people come back from that type of serious life saving circumstance and diseases to live, and they come back a completely, entirely different person. Their paranormal abilities are escalated. Even attributes are escalated. Um, say, given a leg limb, and
Well,
the
it's
athlete,
interesting. It's
somebody that
interesting what
wasn't normally an athlete, and that person had the ability to jump a hurdle with no problem, you know.
you,
So there's so
well,
different things that are entailed in it.
Well, Williams, what you said earlier was very interesting about scars. Don't be ashamed of your scars because they show. Every scar tells. So I got a few of my own. Every scar tells a story, and it tells that you survived. That you made it through that whatever it is. So don't be ashamed of scars because they're a part of you. The scars that we should worry about are the ones that are up here, the ones that are scarred in our mind. Our minds are scarred with. Those are the ones that can be really debilitative to us. They can hold us back if we're not careful. So we got to deal with those scars. And that's what you say. A lot of times, experiences can scar our souls, per se. And we need to be very careful about that. And I think that's exactly the story of Frankenstein. He didn't have the empathy for his creation. He didn't love it. He just had a scientific, analytical look at it, and that was all. It was an experiment to him. That's what it was. But he didn't understand that the thing he created needed that love and that understanding and that empathy and that feeling that was not there. And we got to be very careful with that. When it comes to dealing with other human beings along that same line. Somebody wants to describe human beings as a stack of blocks. You can take one block out and the whole thing's going to fall down. And that's the way some people are. You remove some major component of their makeup and they just fall to pieces, you know? And that happens a lot. And we have to be very careful in our outlook on life and how we deal with others. We don't want to pull those blocks out. We need to build each other up, not tear each other down, which is exactly what Frankenstein wanted to do. Once he made his creation, he wanted to tear it down. He wanted to destroy it. No, we should not do that. We should build people up. If he had taken that creature that he created out of dead parts and gave it love, gave it understanding, and empathized with it, tried to help it, it would not have been a monster. That's what made it a monster. It wasn't the scars. It wasn't the ugliness. It was it was that complete lack of feeling and love and empathy that he had. That's what made the monster a monster. But like I said before, the real monster was Dr. Frankenstein himself, not the creation. Because he's the one that really screwed up. He's the one that made the monster what it was because of the way he did. It wasn't the monster's fault. He didn't want to be born. He didn't want to be made. He wasn't born. He was made. He didn't want to be made. Like we sometimes don't want to be born. We don't have any say so in that. But uh, uh, that was the whole lesson of Frankenstein is the fact that if you don't love your creation, if you don't nurture it, whatever it is, if it's a painting or a story or a poem or an observation you want to write down or a bag you want to make or something you want to create, if you don't love it, put yourself into it and love it, then it won't be a good product that you produce. You won't have you in it. And I've often said that that's what makes us true children of God, because as children we have a little bit of our Father in us. We have a little bit of our Maker in us, and unfortunately, the monster, Frankenstein's monster, didn't have that part of Dr. Frankenstein in him. He didn't have that connection with his creator. The creator could have fixed that, but he didn't, and that's where he failed. And so that's the true story of Frankenstein on becoming a monster. You make monsters. Usually they're not born monsters. You make them that way. And that's the interesting, I think, moral part of what Mary Wollstonecraft Shelley had to say about that. And it was an interesting moral tale. Although the book was banned when it first came out because it was so blasphemous, a man actually trying to be God, that was but finally it got unbiased, and it was set out, was unbanned and set out so people could read it. It took a while, but it is an interesting story. As a matter of fact, one of my favorite books. I read it at least once a year, along with Dracula, my other favorite book. And I love the way it's written. The way it's written in a diary form. It's almost as if he's telling the story step by step, but yet the monster gets to say so in it as well. But the interesting thing is that how it ends. It really has not. It has a very ambiguous ending. We'll never know exactly if they found each other out there on the ice and killed each other, or what happened, or if the monster is still alive somewhere in the Arctic. Um, but the interesting thing is the way it's told. The story's told. I like the way the book itself does that way. So if you ever get a chance, you want to read. It's an interesting book to read, and it still talks to us. To almost 200 years later, it still has a story to tell us. It still has a moral to give us that we should not emulate our Creator. We should try to find common ground with our Creator. We should try to embrace our Creator and not try to make ourselves distant from Him. Um, that's what the whole story of Frankenstein was all about. So I think we've lost William somewhere along the line there. I get talking, and I don't know when to shut up. But anyway, um, I don't know if we've lost William permanently here or what, so I may have to go close out the program here so we can get him back. I don't know. But anyway, I think Frankenstein is very interesting, and it has a lot to tell us. And it's one of my favorite books, and I recommend it highly. And I think for she was a 16-year-old girl that wrote this about a nightmare, which I find very interesting. I think Shelley had a little bit to do with it too. I think he had a little bit of an influence on it, but still, all these friends sitting around telling ghost stories one night. And this is one of the stories that got told. I think another story was told about vampires. So since actually Dracula was kind of born that night too, on that dark, stormy night in Germany. I think it was in Germany or Switzerland, somewhere like that. One night in a castle um, from a nightmare. That's very interesting anthology. But it's one of my favorites. If you ever get a chance to read it, you might want to check it out. So I guess it's about 11:11 now. So it's time. I guess we'll go ahead and sign off, and maybe I can go find out what happened to William. And thank you all for watching and listening on Becoming Monsters tonight. Very interesting subject, Frankenstein, maker of monsters. And I hope you'll catch us tomorrow. We'll be on tomorrow for the. Here's William now. Coming back, I think he's trying to get back. Anyway, we'll be on tomorrow for the Saturday morning brew at 10 o'clock. That'll be tomorrow, and then Sunday we'll be on again at 10 o'clock. On that, we'll see what interesting subjects we can get into. Let's see if we can get William back here. There he is. I'm about to close out on you here, Mr. Nighthawk. I thought you were gone for good.
Uh, yeah, we actually we tried to reset the internet here in order to make a stronger signal. So
Yeah,
that's appear
yeah.
for apologies. but yeah, we had to try and do something. It was starting to break up way too bad.
Yeah, it's really
Anyways, I
hanging
want
there.
to thank everybody for being here. It's good to see everybody out there in the chat. Melissa, tell David he missed including a dramatic ending to where we lost internet. So I hope everybody enjoyed it. We got into some really, really deep subjects on the whole topic of becoming monsters. And I hope we actually answered a few questions out there, and the whole psyche thing too of thinking that somebody does happen, and we all know it does happen. Heck, see teenagers all the time. They get a pimple on their forehead, and they, oh my god, I'm a monster. I mean, if that makes you a monster, then I've been one a long time.
Yeah, me
So,
too.
but everybody, yeah, we'll be back in the morning, like Dennis was saying, for the Paranormal Weekend Morning Brew at 10 a.m. Hopefully, we'll send 10 a.m. Eastern. And we'll continue our further conversations in the paranormal world. And I think tomorrow morning, off with a lot of unusual things. So it would definitely be a good one to watch. I'm not going to give it away because every time I give something away, they always try to censor us. And this is going to be a good topic tomorrow. Trust me, paranormal. So, with that being said, I want to thank you for being here, and we will see you all in the morning. Take care and have a great rest of your evening.